Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our webinar on Google Search Best Practices. I'm Karen Cahill, and I'm your host. Bella Robbins and Scott Lawrence are going to tag team with me and going over some of these new Google best practices.
Hello.
Hey, everyone.
And I like to tell everyone at the beginning of each webinar that questions and comments should be written in the Q&A box. And we'll also provide an email at the end of this for any additional questions you may think of after the webinar is over.
And as usual, we've got to tell everyone who we are. So Response Mind Digital, or RMD, is a digital marketing agency based in Atlanta, Georgia. We give these webinars every 2 to 3 weeks on anything and really everything related to digital marketing.
And most people understand what the D in RMD means because we're digital marketing. But Response Mind refers to the fact that we're a direct response digital marketing agency. And we always think of ourselves as mining for riches. Or in our case, you know, we're mining for responses to our marketing. So unlike traditional marketing, digital marketing allows us to, you know, constantly test, to have a very quick turnaround and ensure that the best ads and landing pages and content are performing to make sales.
Indeed. Okay, so let's take a quick look at today's agenda. And the first bullet of the agenda is called the ETA thing, because every time Google announces a big change, we always call it like the latest thing. So after Google announced a few weeks ago that they were sunsetting expanded text ads, it became the ETA thing. But then in the next bullet point, Scott's going to talk about Google bidding strategies and audiences. And then he and Bella will tag team to offer tips and tactics for selling both locally and at the national level. We call them the Home Depot and the Amazon model.
And I'll just point out that we also have a commercial break in the middle there. That's where I'll drop in and give a short 2-minute intermission explaining what we do at Response Mind Digital.
And we always like to point out the feedback form up front. It's actually really important for us to know what worked and what did not work. It takes less than a minute to fill that out. So we'd appreciate if y'all would be good sports and fill that out at the end of the webinar.
And the last thing, we're actually adding an agenda at the bottom of every slide in our webinars now. So when we're on the bidding segment, that'll be highlighted and so on, so that everyone can kind of just keep track of where we are in the program and on the agenda. And we'll highlight each one as we're on that segment so you can see what's coming up next.
Okay, so now let's move on to the ETA thing. So we wanted to quickly cover expanded text ads first, because this webinar is about the latest Google search trends. And we figured that because ETAs are going away in June of this year, we should probably include a short segment on that. So with that said, there's probably a few people tuning in today who don't really care about ETAs, but maybe want to hear about moving to automated bid strategies, or hear about what we found are the best tactics for creating Google ads for long distance versus local sales models. So I want to say that we only have 3 slides on the ETA thing, so just hang in there as we cover off on this.
All right, well, very quickly, I'll mention that the writing was on the wall that ETAs were going away a full year ago, when responsive search ads replaced ETAs as the default and type for Google search campaigns. So there was a lot of talk even back then that ETAs might sunset. And sure enough, Google announced at the end of August last year that new ETAs will not be an option as of June 30th of 2022.
But the real question, I think, Bella, is whether people consider this to be a beneficial change.
The answer is probably most don't. At least from the online chatter we've seen consistently, absolutely no one is happy about this change. But that's always to be expected. Change is difficult. But also, responsive ads seem to give Google more control over ad copy. So this switch to responsive ads makes a lot of people feel like they're losing control.
Yeah, but some have argued that it's less about losing control and more about ease of use.
Well, yes, that's true. Advertisers that struggle with coming up with 3 headlines and 2 descriptions for ETAs might have a harder time when it comes to creating 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. And the issue with RSAs isn't always even the lack of control. Sometimes there's just only so many different ways you can say buy our product or call us for a free estimate.
But there are some workarounds, so let's talk about those. And pinning is the first workaround.
Right. As, and I will probably butcher this, Evan Lilly points out on Twitter in response to a complaint from another tweet. He suggests pinning all ads using 3 headlines and 2 descriptions.
But that could be problematic.
That appears to be true. There's some evidence that Google has a tendency to diminish your ad strength when ads are pinned. So pinning everything could perhaps hurt your quality score.
Yeah, and in other webinars, we've mentioned that the quality score is important because it lowers your cost per click and it gets your ad shown more.
Right. Well, as this tweet points out, again, anecdotally, which is all we have when trying to understand the impacts of Google's changes, because Google doesn't always explain why they do what they do. Your quality score or ad strength may be impacted by pinning your ads.
But another workaround came from the idea that we could make responsive ads more like ETAs by filling out minimal headlines and descriptions.
Yes, that's true. And again, another workaround included filling out only 3 headlines and 2 descriptions, leaving the rest of the RSA blank, like an ETA. But Google's pretty quick to learn about these workarounds, and we wouldn't necessarily suggest this as a best practice. We think it's likely to hurt your quality score if that's important to you.
Yeah, and further bad news is that reporting for RSAs is not quite as robust as it is for ETAs. Responsive ads provide pretty high-level reporting.
Right. Well, metrics and reporting allow us to test and optimize. And it appears that the point of RSAs is to build testing into the campaign and let Google take care of the testing for you.
So Google appears to kind of want to dumb it down a little for the common user.
With 4 descriptions and 15 headlines, I guess there are thousands of combinations. So most people outside of data-driven direct response agencies like ours might not bother digging in too deeply to understand the data.
Yeah, I suppose the larger point to take away from all of this is that Google's machine learning and automation isn't likely to go away in the near future.
Right. But we still have some control over automation. Again, pinning is still one option for those trying to keep control and measure of their ad campaigns. You probably just need to test it to see if the ad score is impacted and weigh which is more important to you.
In fact, Google has their own little public service announcement about pinning that maybe not a lot of people know about.
Right. Well, Google knows about the pinning workaround we've mentioned. So the underlying message is that it's probably not best to overpin.
Yeah, but ETAs aren't actually going anywhere for, 4 more months. So there's still some time to use them.
Right. There's still some runway left, at least for Google standards. And keep in mind, ETAs can still run. You just won't be able to change them. So we suggest A/B testing like crazy, as we do for everything, and keep them running for as long as Google allows them to run. Also, the ETA problem is mostly about copy. So take this time to make evergreen ETAs. And remember, we still have control of targeting, which is arguably much more important than a headline or ad copy.
Yeah, I like that silver lining. But of course, this focus on automation actually provides a nice segue to the next segment of the webinar, where we compare manual bidding to automated bidding. So, Scott, you ready to get into that?
Yes, I am. Let's do it.
All right. So now we're talking about Google search bid strategies, but some of these strategies work with Bing too, right?
Yes, some do, but there are some small discrepancies, and Bing doesn't actually offer everything that Google does. So we'll just stick with Google for our examples here. Besides, this is billed as a webinar on Google search tactics. So
Right. I should mention, we've also done a webinar on alternatives to the duopoly, also known as Google and Facebook, where we talk much more about Microsoft ads and platforms like DuckDuckGo, Pinterest, and Snapchat. So anyone listening today who'd like a recording of that webinar, just shoot us over an email at the end of this and we will get it to you. But getting back to the topic of bid strategies, there are two general types, right? Manual and automated.
Right. And we're going to talk more about how and why we use certain automated strategies, because automated bidding appears to be the lesser understood type of the two. Also, some manual bidding, well, some of the manual bidding strategies may also be going away as machine learning increases. So at any rate, what type of bid strategy we choose is going to be determined always by what our objective is.
Such as?
Well, for instance, at ResponseMind, we have a national retail client who is always interested in selling hats and jackets and other types of clothing online. Their objective is always going to be very different than, say, one of our B2B clients who isn't actually trying to land a sale online.
And Scott, when you say land a sale online, that's because that particular B2B client is selling services that cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. So no one's likely to buy from them based on some search ad like they might do for a hat or a jacket online.
Right, exactly. B2B organizations, most of them are more just looking to start a conversation with the right prospects.
Okay, but hang on a second. A moment ago, you made sort of, an offhand remark that some manual bidding may be going away. And is that specifically because machine learning is just getting better?
I don't know if it's getting better per se. I mean, maybe. I suppose everything evolves, and Google would probably rather have everyone use automated bidding. So Google has more control. But the larger point is that it just seems to be the way things are moving, because it's easier not to get a high conversion rate with manual bidding.
And it makes sense that Google wants you to get the best conversion rate. I mean, the higher the conversion you get from them, the more likely you are to use Google ads rather than Microsoft ads or whatever. So give us an example of exactly how it works.
Okay, so let's take the max CPC strategy. That's the manual strategy where probably most paid search veterans cut their teeth when they're initially getting into it. So with that model, Google determines who are great, good, or not so good prospects for your product. So you tell Google the maximum bid you're willing to pay to get those prospects. And it's kind of like a cost cap or a ceiling, which controls cost, but it doesn't necessarily provide the best value. There may, in fact, be more valuable customers just on the other side of that ceiling or that roof in our image. So it's really only supposed to find the best suited prospects under that bid amount. So that max CPC is an important manual one, but the next closest automated version of max CPC is enhanced CPC, which is where you set up a max CPC just like before.
And how does Google determine that, whether someone's more likely to buy or to convert, as you put it?
Well, of course, we say convert just because a strategy isn't always about getting someone to buy an article of clothing or something inexpensive. A lot of B2B marketers are going to talk to 6.8 people before they sell to a new company. So they usually just want to get a conversation going with the prospect, and that's a conversion. They're literally never, however, going to get someone to actually buy something by clicking on a Google ad.
And just allow me to interject here that we also have a webinar on the best B2B tactics for marketing. So let us know if you want a recording of that one. Okay, Scott, sorry, please continue.
Okay, well, enhanced CPC is very similar to the original max CPC, like I said, except with enhanced, you give permission to Google to bid above the max bid amount based on Google's logic as to whether that prospect is more likely to convert. And Google appears to have the ability not just to determine who is in market, as they say, for a product or service, but how ready to buy they are.
In other words, they have algorithms algorithms based on if consumers have been to your site before or your competitor's site, if they've searched on Google for your products, if they've driven to competitors' stores, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And not all of that is reliant on third-party cookies either. You know, Google searches our first-party data. Well, they get their, it's actually considered their first-party data when we do Google searches. They consider it first-party. And if you use Google Maps or Waze, which Google owns, and stay logged into your account with your location services turned on, Google's tracking you to the stores that you're visiting. And not everyone realizes that. They're reporting it. They're reporting how many store visits there are. It's actually a feature inside of Google Analytics. And inside of GA, that feature is aptly named store visits. Anyway, Google has a lot of ways to track without using third-party cookies, which have been in decline and should be going away completely when Google Chrome gets rid of them in 2023.
And Google's machine learning can actually predict who your best prospects are.
Yep. And while it's probably true that they like the idea of you spending more than your max CPC, they also like the idea that you're going to have higher conversion rates, because the higher the conversion rate, the more useful Google search is to you and your business, which presumably means you'll use Google search more.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about other automated bidding strategies that we think work pretty well.
Right. Well, enhanced CPC certainly works to an extent, so long as you put the time into figuring out what a new prospect is actually worth. But target cost per acquisition, or target CPA, is another good automated bid strategy.
Yeah, that's where we tell Google what we'd like to acquire new customers at some target cost, whether that's $5 or $200. But we talked about a client that sells hats and jackets. We wouldn't use target CPA there, right? I mean, those jackets are usually worth a lot more than the ball caps.
Right. We're more likely to use target ROAS in that case.
Yeah, and I'm sure that most people know that acronym, but just for the record, ROAS stands for return on ad spend.
Right. So when every conversion is worth the same amount, like we might find with a B2B client trying to start conversations with prospects, target cost per acquisition is likely to work just fine. But when you have different prices and different costs for every item you're selling, targeting in particular return on ad spend is really the better of those two strategies.
And the next two we wanted to talk about are related. We have maximize conversions, and we have what's known as maximize conversion value.
Right. And whether you want to use maximize conversions or maximize conversion value has everything to do with whether you want to focus on a cost per acquisition model or a return on ad spend, or ROAS model. So let's take a closer look at that. So this screen grab here at the bottom of the page shows the little blurb in Google Ads for maximizing conversions, where it sets your bids automatically to help you get the most conversions within your budget. So it's all about targeting a particular return on ad spend. There's no target CPA goal here, but if we wanted to use target CPA, we just click on that little box right there, and you just type in your intended cost per acquisition beneath it.
So at that point, each acquisition has a value you're willing to pay, which is what we said we'd use for B2B, where each lead is worth the same amount.
Right. And the way you move from maximize conversions to maximize conversion value can be seen right here by clicking on the conversions drop-down menu.
And at that point, it would be conversion value with a target ROAS rather than a target CPA.
You got it. And at that point, you're selling your ROAS, you're setting your ROAS goal, just like you did with the target CPA.
And so why would someone choose to use a target CPA rather than a target return on ad spend? Return on your ad spend seems more precise. Using a target CPA doesn't sound as economically wise.
Well, for some businesses at different points in the season or the sales cycle, the number of units that you're selling is worth more to a business for each additional unit they sell. There are, for instance, economies of scale to be taken advantage of. So the more you sell, the less each unit costs. So they may be willing to pay more for those later sales.
Right, I guess, or things like clearance items that are moving out of season. I suspect, like we saw a couple of weeks ago when all that Valentine's candy was half price. Anyway, for some industries such as furniture or automobiles, warehousing and inventory costs could prove to be more expensive than paying a little more to unload the product. And you could either have discounted sales pricing to sell more of them, or you could pay more in advertising to get more people to buy it at the normal price.
Right. Or you could do both. I mean, there's always a balance to be had, but since Google has the ability to target people who they deem to be in market for your for your products rather, it's pretty helpful to have the ability to target your best prospects when you're trying to unload inventory.
Okay, and this one probably isn't quite as sophisticated, right? Maximize clicks.
Right. Well, I mean, maximize clicks is just as it sounds. You're trying to get as many people to your site as possible. Maybe you're having a limited time fire sale for certain products, for example, but you're probably gonna pay top dollar because, as everyone knows, the most click search ads are the ones at the top of the SERP. Still, it's automated, and the algorithm should target people most likely to go to your site. So it takes the guesswork out of how much you should actually bid. And then target impression shares are a little different than the others because it's not based on clicks and conversions, which is usually what we're going to look at. But with this one, you're telling Google that you want, say, 90% of the impressions for a particular search phrase.
Ouch, for impression shares. I mean, I guess Google then charges you accordingly. That seems a little risky if you're trying to control your costs just to get lots of impressions. I mean, just seeing an ad doesn't even mean you're selling anything.
Right. Yeah, and impressions are risky. We've always said that, but you can actually set a max bid for this one. You can tell Google that you want to be in the #1 position for a search phrase for, whatever, 90% of the impressions with a bid cap of, say, $20. So there is some measure of cost control for this one.
But why would anyone use this strategy when you have all the others? And the others seem to me to be stronger strategies.
And that's a fair point. But we've actually used this as a defensive measure. When a competitor of a B2B client was bidding up on our client's brand name, their company name, their product's name, we use this to ensure that the competitor didn't get top position.
And so long as you keep an eye on it, I suppose you can also get a sense for how much they're willing to pay for the competitor's brand terms. And I believe we have actual examples of ads like this in the Amazon model segment. But Scott, a minute ago, you mentioned that probably more people are familiar with manual bidding rather than automated bidding. So now let's offer some advice for people who are interested in moving from manual to automated bidding.
Yeah, well, let's say you're going to move from manual to a target cost per acquisition campaign. So the first question is, where should I set my target CPA goal? It should be anyway. Well, you'd probably want to go back and look at what's been going on for the last 30 days or 90 days, depending on your sales cycle. And that'll bring up this next window right here. We'll want to look at our cost per conversion or cost per acquisition. And when you hover over it, you'll see Google's definition. And you can see that the cost per conversion for this campaign is currently at $483.
And at $483, we can assume that this target cost per acquisition campaign is for a B2B client.
That's right. Yeah. Better not be selling hats with a cost per acquisition for 483. But let's say we want to set a goal of $200 for our target CPA. That's what this is about. Well, if you're currently, doing $483, you wouldn't want to set your goal too far below 483, at least at first. It wouldn't generate a lot of traffic in it. And at least for direct response marketers, it's always about, measuring and learning and getting better returns over time. So the best thing to do is to launch this with a maximized conversions bidding model until you get to 15 conversions or the campaign is run for 30 days, whichever one comes first.
And how did we come up with 15 conversions or 30 days?
Well, you know, our guys are on the phone with Google reps on about a weekly basis, and this is just what we found as a best practice. At any rate, after 15 conversions, look at your cost per conversion. And whatever that is, that's where you want to start your target CPA target.
So to summarize, you're actually using one automated bidding strategy, maximize conversions, to find out the best target CPA. And you're doing that in order to get enough data to start using a different automated bidding strategy, target CPA.
Right, it's that simple. And at that point, you'll want to run target CPA for a week or two, depending on the number of conversions. And then you can start to walk that number down over time. And it's the same with target ROAS, as a matter of fact. But keep in mind that the cost per acquisition, the cost per conversion or acquisition is the metric used for TCPA, while conversion value is found here. There. So conversion value over cost is actually the ROAS metric, as opposed to cost over conversion.
Okay, so at this point, according to what we're seeing on the screen, you're getting 16 cents on the dollar for your ROAS. And so you'd set your campaign to maximize conversion value at 16 cents for your target ROAS, and then you'd run that for 30 days.
Right. And Google will try to get as many conversions as possible within our budget. Then we'd flip that to target ROAS and let it run at 16 cents for a max of 2 weeks before walking it up. So let's say we want a ROAS goal of $1 instead of 16 cents. Well, you can't just flip it from 16 cents to $1. You have to walk it up gradually, maybe 20 cents at first, maybe 30 cents next, you know, working toward your goal. Just keep an eye on it and test continually.
So Scott, when we started this segment on bid strategies, you mentioned leveraging audiences. And you said this is an often overlooked resource in Google Ads that even the biggest companies miss. So let's revisit that before we move to the next segment.
Right. So audiences are important. And from our experience, they're usually not used anywhere close to optimally. So let's consider our B2B client again, where buyers typically spend much more time evaluating a seller than someone like online retail.
And those B2B prospects probably make more than one trip to your website before buying.
Right. They're downloading white papers, they're watching videos to learn more about you and your products and your company. And this is especially true for most B2B marketers. Your prospect isn't just checking you out, they're checking out your competitors too. Well, especially if someone comes to your site more than once, retargeting to specific lists is important. Retargeting them keeps your brand top of mind at a time that they're interested in your products and services. So for instance, inside of our audience manager in Google Ads, you can see we created this audience of non-login visitors within 180 days.
And so by focusing on visitors to the website who didn't log in, it's a way to focus on the people who have visited in the last 6 months, but also weed out the current customers.
Right. At least that's the idea. And this audience actually focuses on people who only visited one page, as you can see here. So we have campaigns focusing on getting those people to come back a second time. So if we put them in a retargeting campaign, it would be more of an introductory message, inviting them back. But an audience of people who downloaded something from the website and had a page depth of 5, might receive messaging that just suggests that there are other resources available to download. It should always be about getting them to the next step in your marketing funnel.
And there's a list at the bottom here called all converters. That looks like a good list, and presumably that's the list that informed the similar audience called similar to all converters.
Right. And that's using Google's logic. They'll build a list of people who resemble your very best prospects, and Google will do that automatically for you, usually within a day or two, so you can focus marketing to them too.
And Google goes out of their way to help you spend more money with them.
Right. Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, you can see Google built a similar audience for those who visited the website, whether the list was full of, fat thumb clicks or whatever. But you can also build much more detailed lists in Google Analytics rather than Google Ads. For instance, we had one B2C client where we found that if a visitor was on the website for a full minute, they had around a 60% higher chance of converting. So those audiences are extremely valuable. That's not a fat thumb click, or a I'm not really interested click. Those are, hey, I'm actually interested in researching your company clicks.
So not all clicks are created equal.
Right, but more complicated lists like page depth, which is how many pages of your visited, or lists based on specific products someone bought or the size of a shopping cart, for instance. Those are made in Google Analytics rather than Google Ads, which is actually where we are right now.
Okay, that's all good stuff. And next, Bella's going to cover off on the Home Depot model, tips and tricks for using Google search to sell locally. But first, this is where Scott wanted to step in and give his 2-minute, maybe even 1-minute commercial on what we do at ResponseMind Digital.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, this may be the shortest webinar commercial ever, because what we're offering today is essentially what we've been talking about in this webinar. So I don't have to go into too much about it. I mean, Bella and Karen and I are spending about an hour talking about what we think are the best general practices for Google search, but this is an assessment that we can do that's done specifically for your company on an individual basis. In other words, if you already have Google Ads account or Microsoft Ads account, hopefully you do, you'll want to give us read-only access, and we'll dig deep into all your company's campaigns and find out how to optimally target the most productive keywords and prospects. And we'll do the necessary research on your competitors and a few other steps to kind of make your paid search campaigns the best they can be for your money that you're spending in the marketing budget. Then we'll just hand the keys back over to you. Okay, and that is the commercial.
It was quick.
Oh, actually, if you're interested in having a look, I'm sorry, I was supposed to launch that commercial break form. So if you're interested in having us look under the hood, as they say, just indicate on the form that should be on your screen now, and let us know if you're interested. And we'll also have this question on the feedback form at the end to tell us what you think. And that really is the commercial now.
All right, thanks, Scott. And of course, there are more options other than just paid search assessments. If you're interested in help with your paid social campaigns or SEO or anything else, just indicate it with the second question. And everyone should see that form on your screens now. And we really appreciate you letting us know if you're interested or if you're not interested. And I think we're going to leave it up for just a minute, but we can't stall too long because we got a lot to get through before we get back to the top of the hour. So we've broken the paid search segment into 2 groups. Bella's going to cover off on the local paid search tips, and Scott's going to cover what we think is really important for paid search at the national level. The local model, which we call the Home Depot design, has 3 points to make for creating great paid search campaigns for retail. So Bella, take it away.
Thank you, Karen. And let me just say that we build this as the Home Depot model because although they're a national company, 60% of all online orders that Home Depot receives are picked up at their local store. And Home Depot loves that. They highlight it with infographics in every quarterly report, and that percentage has been steadily growing for 3 years. In fact, Walmart is trying to model their marketing efforts after it because shipping is expensive, and who knows what else they'll buy once they're in the store.
Yeah, that would be a really good way for Walmart to better compete with Amazon, which is what we call our national model, but I'm getting a little ahead of the agenda there.
Right. Well, our national paid search segment is called the Amazon model because Amazon does not care where you are in the world. They have 0% of Amazon purchases picked up in store. And Amazon has a legit model because there are economies of scale in selling everything out of giant warehouses. Anyway, they're fighting head to head with Walmart every day on low priced everything.
Okay, and Scott will cover that next segment in the Amazon model, but let's start with the Home Depot local sales model.
All right, so we have 3 tips for the local model. First one, this is an example of a realtor who sells online nationally, but also has brick and mortar stores. For local, you have to treat the campaigns separately. So to drive local sales, city-related keywords should be used prominently. Now, some of the paid search veterans listening in know that city terms are going to have less volume, which is a metric that we look at and consider, but city-related keywords also usually have much higher conversion rates because of how targeted they are. And they're often among the top performing keywords.
And speaking of top performing keywords, the bullet points suggest everyone should also combine all top performing regular keywords with the city or area names.
Right, I'm actually going to talk a little more about that in point number 3.
Okay.
But point number 2 is one that's sort of a contentious one because it usually means doing a lot more work for what some would say just isn't worth it.
So it may be prudent to remind everyone at this point how Google search became so massively popular so quickly, 20 some years ago. Users chose Google over other search engines for one reason. After Google search first came out, search engine users felt like they would more quickly find what they were looking for on Google because of Google's superior search algorithm. And even today, Google likes to give precisely what their users want on their first try.
Right, and that's why Google created a quality score, because if an ad is getting clicked on for certain search phrases more frequently, then that ad is providing better search results to Google search customers. So we believe that one keyword per ad group requires you to make your ad more relevant and precise. And the more relevant it is, the better the click-through rates you'll get. And that means you'll get a better quality score. And the better quality score Google assigns to you, the lower you'll pay in cost per click. And that's precisely why it's worth doing.
Right. Okay, what's the third point?
The third point is to really dig in on using location-based ad copy. And as Carrie mentioned a minute ago, you should use your top performing keywords with city or area names.
And Haverty's is another example of a national brand that's driving local sales.
Yes, but I think the main point of this slide is to remember the basics of a good ad. Speak to what the user is looking to do. Like this example, complete your home. And this may seem a rudimentary point, but it gets missed all of the time. Always make sure to include a unique selling proposition and a strong call to action that tells them to act now.
And the city or area name should ideally go in the first or second headline, like this ad.
Right. Again, your target audience has a tendency to notice their home area. We all do. And that's a bigger finding than many national marketers realize, at least when attempting to drive local sales. It's a huge finding because you're going to get a better click rate, which will help your quality score, which will lower your cost per click. I live in the greater Atlanta area, but I notice ads that mention Roswell and Sandy Springs and Alpharetta in cities that are closer to me, just north of Atlanta. I don't want to drive into the city if I don't have to, and definitely not through Atlanta. Ads that say, right? Ads that say biggest selection in Atlanta may be appealing, but they're far less appealing to me than something that's just down the street.
Yeah, and I suspect it's also important to use the language that the locals know. Like Pinnacle Hills Promenade is a mall in Rogers, Arkansas, which is where I'm from, Bella. Just kidding. But it's also known by both Rogers Promenade and Pinnacle Hills Promenade, so both are used in this ad. So that was a Home Depot or local model, but we also have 4 paid search tips for the national or Amazon model. And that's all the setup I'm going to give for this segment that Scott is going to cover.
Okay, well, so for long distance sales, the first tip is to focus on 2 types of keywords, branded and non-branded. Depending on the size of your company, people may search for your company's brand and products. And so we think it's essential to break out our campaigns by brand keywords and non-brand keywords.
Yeah, Scott, we've had questions on this from people before, from people who don't understand why you'd want to pay more to buy your own brand name keywords. They point out that if you type in Clorox to a search engine, Clorox.com is always going to be the first organic listing. So why would Clorox buy the paid listing, which, by the way, gets fewer clicks than the organic listings?
It's true that organic gets more clicks, but if you don't bid on your brand, your competitors might, and they'll pick up that paid search traffic. So in order to make sure that your competitors don't steal into that space, you should bid on your own brand name.
Okay, let's look at some examples. Right, so we ran a quick search for Bounty paper towels. This is the shopping section, which we'll look at in a minute, but not right now. And these right here are paid search ads, which we are going to talk about. And this is the first organic listing, which isn't paid for and which we are also not going to talk about.
Right, so you can see the term Bounty paper towels in the search bar above, and the final 2 paid search ads return are channels where you can buy those items. But look who won the 3rd paid search spot.
Yeah, Brawny is a competitive brand that bid on the keyword Bounty paper towels.
That's right, and that is precisely why you should bid on your own branded keywords.
Right, so tip number 2. Here we're talking about the importance of landing pages, which we've spent much more time on in other webinars. Anyway, when a customer clicks on your ad, you want to make sure that you send them to the correct page, of course. So much of what it takes to get a customer to convert is making sure that their user experience is flawless.
Yeah, so the purpose of a landing page should always be to give the consumer exactly what she's looking for, then make it just exceedingly easy to purchase what she wants.
Yeah, and if you're a company like Amazon, once that purchase is complete, then you'll offer additional suggestions for other items that complement what you've just purchased.
Right, after the purchase. But before the purchase, you don't want to treat your prospective customer like this Walmart landing page for Bounty paper towels. This is directly from the keyword search from the last slide for Bounty paper towels. From that ad, we were taken to this landing page, which highlights the Walmart Plus program.
Yeah, that's not an ordering page. It has nothing to do with the product that I want to buy. And I think if this was my search, I might immediately hit the back button and click on another result.
Exactly. And that's something you definitely don't want to have happen. These types of mistakes are actually pretty common for even the biggest retailers like Walmart. You want a customer to click on your ad, land on your page, and buy your product. And you should always cater your landing page to help them do that. The content of your wording, by the way, the colors and the images and the white spaces, the consistency of your brand, even the font, are all important to consider for every landing page.
And this page looks like they're trying to push some sort of membership that might compete with Amazon Prime, which may be a better idea after the person has satisfactorily bought the product they're searching for. Right.
And this initiative may be really important as a goal for Walmart corporate, but we'd argue that they're going about it the wrong way, since they're inserting the landing page before the sale is completed. I'd be willing to bet their abandon rates were really jacked up for this campaign. So let's look at an example of how it really should be done. So here's an ad result for Staples when we search for Bounty paper towels. And here's the landing page we were taken to.
Yeah, that's much better. This is a product category page, but it's very relevant to the search because it's only showing us various Bounty paper towel options and their prices. And it's a good transition because now I can customize the product I want to choose and then directly order it.
True. And they have these ratings, these little stars right here, which consumers love to see. It just eases apprehensions about purchasing.
Yeah, the only concerning factor on this page are all of those out of stock boxes. And it looks as if that may be because of the site's architecture. We can see at the top that Staples is organized to pull up Bounty products first, then paper towels, which is slightly different than the next example that we're going to see.
Yeah, well, there are really two schools of thought about that. The first is that if you load a page with several products that people can see but can't have, they may decide they want that out of stock item and go somewhere else for it, especially if there's one rated higher than the one that's available. The other opposite consideration also makes sense, which is always to have open and honest transparency with your prospects. If it's out of stock, just tell your customers and put the pressure on your logistics team to fix the supply chain problem, which has been a little difficult lately.
Right.
With that said, there is another option to consider if there's just a huge amount of paper towels, as we've seen certainly during 2020, when people were out of stock for the product they were searching for.
And, oh, sorry. Scott, I was about to jump in there.
Go. Okay, well, anyway, this is the option. This time we've clicked on the Box.com ad for Bounty, and it takes us here to this page.
Yeah, this one's good because it includes what we're looking for, but it also shows us toilet paper, tissues, other paper towel brands, rather than just several items that are out of stock.
Yeah, and this is a good landing page if you're out of stock on several Bounty products. In that case, giving them alternatives is a great option. And that may be due to the way their site architecture is built. The Staples example took you to a page containing only Bounty paper towels, but Box.com has their site set up to go first to paper products, then what they call towels, which is likely why you'll end up seeing different items. Different brands.
Okay, so the third point is to make sure your ad copy and messaging is very relevant and specific to the user, similar to the local segment on the construction of great ad copy. So here's a search result for the phrase Clorox wipes.
Yeah, the title of the ad is the branded product term, with the addition of an attention-grabbing fact, kills 99% of bacteria. And that's what people have been caring about since 2020. So it's a pretty good attention getter.
Yeah, and look at the extensions, like surprising uses and ratings and reviews. These are great as long as they go to a landing page that also allowed me to buy. I would definitely click on, the one that says surprising uses. That's an interesting one. And ratings and reviews is always a good idea to include because people love to crowdsource their options for products. So having a rating accomplishes that for them.
Yep, and here's another example. It's a good practice to include the product term in the title. Remember, at this point, you're really just trying to get them to click your ad. But you can see that, they also made it relevant and timely. And in much of 2020 and 2021, many consumers expected certain products not to be in stock. And by the way, you'll know what their biggest concerns are with just a little bit of inexpensive research. And I'll just point out, for reasons that we don't have time to get into, free shipping and free return test really well for products. Search ads are, of course, very limited on the amount of space that you can use. But if you have free shipping and a return policy, that term will always be good. It's a great use of space, at least in interstate marketing ads. Okay, for the fourth point, remember, do you remember that part that we talked about earlier that we said we'd look at later? Well, that's this time. This is the shopping ads page that almost invariably comes up first for most product searches. Again, Google and other search engines are trying to make it extremely easy to find exactly what you're looking for immediately. So they put shopping ads first, and these ads get clicked a lot.
Okay, so let's see how to get your shopping ads listed at the top of Google search.
Yeah, this is a very small sample of a very large spreadsheet that we upload nightly for one of our clients, reflecting the titles, descriptions, and other elements related to shopping ads for literally hundreds of products.
And there are no keywords, so you upload a spreadsheet to Google, and that's what gets the ads to load for shopping ads.
Right. More specifically, there's a feed that you send to the Google Merchant Center. And the minimum to update is once every 30 days, but it's pretty common to send it every night. I mean, we do. And that allows us to, just ensure that out of stock items and price changes can be monitored and modified much more regularly as needed.
And what about the images of the Bounty paper towels we saw there? Do they get that image from the spreadsheet as well?
Yes. The link to the image is in the spreadsheet. In fact, it's right here. Every image has already been loaded to our client's website. We can point directly to it, and we point Google directly to it through this spreadsheet.
So is it an Excel file or a CSV file that's sent every night?
Yeah, either. They'll accept CSV, FTP feed, and you put it in a Google spreadsheet.
So what has to be on the spreadsheet, and where do you send it?
Well, you have to connect your AdWords account, or what they're calling Google Ads, to a shopping feed. I mentioned Google Merchant Center just a second ago, and you can choose whatever way of getting the data to them that works best for you. There are certain required fields and other optional fields. So for instance, you need to include an ID, description, title, availability, price, that sort of thing.
And how does Google choose your image to be one of the few items that gets to the top of their list of candidates?
Well, that's, of course, Google's secret sauce, but it certainly has to do with their quality score and their G10, and of course, how much they're willing to bid. Google likes to make money,
Yeah, right. But hang on a second, you have to explain what G10 is.
So a G10 is right there, and it's a universal code for particular products that are shared between many retailers. And it's likely why the Bounty paper towels had such a competition between the shopping ads that we saw just a second ago.
Okay, well, let's get back to that to see what you mean.
Yeah, so to take a closer look at this shopping ads page, which again is almost invariably at the top of Google search returns for retail. What do you see that stands out?
I don't know, they all look pretty similar. Only two have ratings, Shoplet and Dollar General, and we've already said that ratings are big drivers for consumer interaction.
Right, and products with G10 listings are likely to get ratings on shopping ads with P&G and Dollar General, which they have here. And that's good for them. But Staples probably doesn't have a customer rating because they have a special offer, which Google seems to value more than the star ratings. So they insert a special offer in place of their consumer reviews.
Okay, that makes sense. So what about the Office Depot ad?
Well, at least in this shopping ad, most of these Office Depot ads are showing up as in-store ads. And that means they have the items nearby, so they're available for pickup.
And if you're in need of paper towels immediately, it makes sense for Google to include a local option. These two items appear to be the same, but the one you can pick up in person 5 minutes from your home appears to be a little bit more expensive than the one that will take until at least tomorrow to receive.
Yeah, that may be true, although Dollar General is generally considered a discount store, but certainly getting it sooner may be worth a minor increase in price for some.
Okay, well, I think we are 5 minutes before the top of the hour, and I think that's going to wrap things up today. Scott has already sent an email to everyone, but if you're interested in asking him questions directly, his phone number's here. Give him a call.
Yeah, give me a call. And as always, it's been great to have the chance to talk to everyone today. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yeah, if everybody would fill the feedback form out, we would greatly appreciate it. We want to know the truth, and so just let us know if you enjoyed things. If there were things we could have done better, please go ahead and fill that out before you hop off the call today. Hope everyone has a really fantastic weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
We'll leave the poll up for a couple of minutes. Thanks for filling it out.